Faulty foundations are crumbling. I have the opportunity to redesign new foundations. Even though it sucks right now, you can see that light shining through. It's very difficult under certain failures. I mean, it's difficult under relationship failures. It's difficult under entrepreneurial failures where they might be lawsuits coming against you. You might, have lost a lot of money. Your credit might be damaged. Reputation might be damaged. But these are things that I've experienced and I've learned to optimistically find those positive off ramps into a whole new tapestry of endeavors. I really think that a lot of people, they're clinging to safety, makes them live a small life, often muzzles their internal spirit voice, and I think really makes people sick. Physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, even
because they're not being their true self. They're not letting that be expressed.
It was like that money is spiritual thing. Like, this is how I show my gratitude. And I think when we think of money that way, it can be a tool to lift us up out of poverty, to go bless others. The money that you receive, it really is a thank you note. And that's
Welcome to the Collaborative Resource Hub by Wellness Provisions. We're bridging the gap between mental health, wellness, and rock and roll. I'm Amy McBride, owner of Wellness Provisions, the most badass wellness business. Hey, are you feeling a little stuck in life? I offer wellness coaching sessions. Book a session with me if you're seeking to get healthy and ahead. Sessions are available worldwide. And check this out. Wellness Provisions supplies rock and rollers with high-quality supplements. We've simplified your shopping experience and given you a trustworthy place to go where you can essentially shop blindfolded. And did you know all our Collaborative Resource Hub interviews air on YouTube as well as all major podcast platforms? Subscribe to stay in the loop. Go immerse yourself in the full Collaborative Resource Hub experience over on our website. You'll have access to helpful resources that will inspire and educate you. So let's inspire each other. If that guy did it, so can you. Last but not least, my legal disclaimer. Nothing in this interview or the Collaborative Resource Hub substitutes medical advice. Please connect with your GP if you need medical guidance.
Andrew, how are you?
I'm great. How's it going, Amy? Great to be on the Welly P show with you.
I know, finally, I'm excited. And so I guess we'll kind of just get into it. That's just what I do. Like, I'm not for like all the banter and chit chat. I'm like, oh, you're here, let's start.
Works for me.
So you wrote a book called Failure Rules, and
yes,
there it is.
Failure Rules, the 5 rules of failure for entrepreneurs, creatives, and a word I think I made up, authentics. But you might know what that means. It seems pretty implicit.
Yeah, it's it looks just like super valuable. I've skimmed it. You sent me a digital copy.
Yes.
But my eyeballs cannot like do like screens. So like I didn't read the whole thing from top to bottom.
I'll send you a hard copy too. And there's an audio book too for those non-readers out there. A lot of people have found that helpful while they're working out or commute or whatever.
Yeah. Yes. Good point. So I guess what's your background? Because you've got an interesting, cool music kind of background.
Yeah, so kind of always been a serial entrepreneur, owned 2 record labels, Thorp Records, just put out bands like Madball, Blood for Blood, Slapshot, Sheer Terror, Sailor's Grave Records, which is more on the street punk, oi psychobilly blend, put out like Roger Brent, The Disasters, classic oi band, The Business, God Rest Mickey Fitzsoul, Mad Sin, Coffin Cats, Flatfoot 56, The Goddamn Gallows, all kinds of great stuff. So own record labels, also always been in banking and finance. So had my own financial planning practice, owned online lending companies, both offshore and onshore. Was in the lead generation space. Now I've been a banker in the fintech, financial technology space for almost 9 years, working with some of the cool apps that you see out there. I work for a bank that works with companies similar to like a PayPal or a Chime, those type of companies. So I love doing that. A lot of innovation type stuff with money movement and tech. And then also owned a gym for a period of time. Used to do bodybuilding. So I competed in bodybuilding, at least one competition. So that was years and years ago. Don't have that body anymore. It's more of a rock and roll body now. Got some rocks. I might have a few rolls too, you know? And I wrote a spy novel as well. And now this nonfiction book was kind of accumulation of what I believe are the lessons I've learned from being an entrepreneur, being a creative, trying to live my most authentic life over the first 2 decades of my adult working life, 20s and my 30s. And, you know, what were the lessons I've learned from that, right? So this is kind of it's a study of how to be premeditative in your view of failure and hard times, knowing that, yes, you want to avoid them. This is not failure porn. I'm not saying just go out and fail. It doesn't matter. Everything's okay. Just do whatever the hell you want. It's going to be great, because it's not. Because the tagline is, after it sucks, then failure rules, right? So you want to avoid it, but you have to expect it, particularly if you're trying to do difficult things that align with your unique talent composite, that might be unorthodox, outside of the typical blueprints of safety. And if you're going after those things, you better think about how you're going to handle the inevitable difficulties, complexities, and hard times that will come.
Yeah. And that's it. And like anything that you're doing, I mean, you're going to make mistakes. I mean, like, I've been an entrepreneur since elementary school, and like, so this is my current business, but it's like, just even because you've had businesses before, I mean, like, every opportunity, everything is new and presents challenges. And like, you only can grow from refining screw ups, like.
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
And nothing's static. We live in a very fast moving, even more fast moving with technology and the decrease in barriers and travel and communication and technological exponential growth. So like, to be able to plan on iteration, to plan on pivoting, to have layers and multi-year, if this, then that kind of thinking in your plan is really, really necessary. I mean, to go straight after a dream is not really practical anymore. You kind of have to go after it with belts and suspenders and a mindset that I'm going to go after this, but what I think my end destination is now, I might discover I want a different end destination once I get going. But you got to get going, because that's your calling journey, right? It's not one destination. It's like, listening to that internal spirit voice for each next step and saying, at least now I need to go in this direction. I think this is my end state, but it might be different once I get going. But I know I need to get going and go in that direction.
And that's it. And that's the other thing. I mean, within that too, is like, for people who overthink or, have a lot of fear, you just have to fucking start. And then the path will unfold.
I mean, I have a chapter in the book, it's ready, fire, aim, right? And that sounds reckless. I've probably even been criticized by people for being ready, fire, aim. And it's not quite that extreme. It's more like ready, approximate your aim, fire, refine your aim in flight kind of mentality, right? So it's not just full blown. Like, you have a plan. I mean, I talk about in the book, Peter Thiel in his book 0 to 1, Peter Thiel from the PayPal Mafia, it talks about, you have to, a bad plan is better than no plan at all. You have to have a plan. But you also have to plan to iterate, because that's going to be necessary too, because he's kind of going against the Silicon Valley, ethos of just iterate. You don't really need a full, built plan. I think you do, but you have to plan to iterate.
Yeah.
Like Mike Tyson said, plan's great until you get punched in the mouth. So you got to plan for that punch in the mouth, because it's going to happen in some way, shape, or form, some degree.
And it's like the whole life philosophy of like Taoism, and just be flexible and like, the whole like be like water thing, Bruce Lee, right? So
Bruce Lee, exactly right. I do a video where I talk about Bruce Lee.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
That's awesome.
But it's the non-attachment mentality, which I also talk about in the book, which is, look, I just explained my bio there, and I've done a bunch of different things, and many of them are disparate, but somehow they still all attach to who I am and my personality. But I've been careful to never over-identify with one pursuit. They might be an expression of my personality, might be an expression of my personality at a point in time. They might always kind of live in me in some sort of way, even if just a motif or an expression. But at the same time, like, I recognize that who I am is more internal. Like, it's like Raghunath Kapo from Youth of Today, Shelter, Wisdom of the Sages podcast. I think he might have been on Joe Rogan when he was talking about, I don't have a soul. I am a soul. I have a body. And in the same way, like, I don't have a job. I mean, I'm not a job. I have a job. Like, I am something different than these things that I do.
Yeah, you are your values, and those values are expressed through these different
things. Might be expressed in different ways, entrepreneurial, relationship-wise, artistically over the years. But my core is more based on really eternality, more like intrinsic internal attachments.
I love it. I love it. All right, so should we jump into chapter 1, which is Failure Purifies?
Yeah, so the book's actually structured in parts, the 5 rules of failure. And under each part, there's multiple chapters supporting each rule And those chapters have anchor quotes that kind of connect to a lesson in each chapter that rolls up to the rules. So the structure really kind of revealed itself to me over time, and I think turned out to be quite accessible and digestible. Even though it is a long read, people tell me though it doesn't seem long when they get into it. So
but especially if there's like those anchor points.
Yes.
Because that I've had books like that where it's like that helps my brain. So yeah.
Yeah, and you can pick it up and open it up anywhere in the book and get something out of a standalone chapter.
Yeah.
So failure rule number 1 is failure purifies. It's the idea that the phoenix must burn to emerge, that if you're kind of viewing failures correctly, right, and you're thinking about them ahead of time when they occur, you have a better chance at successfully getting out of the emotional participant mode of your failure, even though that's going to be a part of it because failures suck, and then getting into the more like objective observer mode where you can look at your failures, look at all the surroundings. I didn't plan this, I didn't want this, but what might I pull out of this of value, right? And then you can see how that chaos, you might be able to leverage that to kind of shape your next best steps. And you might learn that this is actually purifying me. Like old thinking is dying, new thinking is emerging, faulty foundations are crumbling. I have the opportunity to redesign new foundations. And oh, how wonderful this, even though it sucks right now, you can see that light shining through. It's very difficult under certain failures. I mean, it's difficult under relationship failures. It's difficult under entrepreneurial failures where they might be lawsuits coming against you. You might, have lost a lot of money. Your credit might be damaged. Reputation might be damaged. But these are things that I've experienced and I've learned to optimistically find those positive off ramps into a whole new tapestry of endeavors.
Yeah.
Specifically, it was a time, and I write about it in the book, where the song Divinity of Purpose by Hatebreed really inspired me. And there's a lot about that concept in the book, anchored from that song, Jamie Josta, wrote the lyrics to. There was a time where I was going through personal divorce, marital divorce, and a business divorce at the same time. I was living in a hotel room, no longer had an office to go to by day or a home to go to by night. And that song really spoke to me. I mean, I could have wallowed in depression or immobility or any of those type of paralytic states. But instead, that song, I found that divinity of purpose, of reinvention. And in that state, 5 things really emerged to help me give a new life. I was able to start consulting in the online lending business that turned into a proper lead generation company that did really well financially for a while. I then also, reinvented myself and got a job in corporate banking in the fintech space where I've been for 9 years. And to me at that time, that was like going, because I was in the online lending space, which was like more subprime oriented. It was like going from being a porn star to a regular actor. Like that was a big deal. That happened. I finished my first spy novel. I began writing Failure Rules at the same time. It was just and I also resurrected my record labels, put out some new records, Booze and Glory, Coffin Cats, a bunch of bands. So it's like, I didn't take those destructive failure elements and see them as final. I didn't connect them to my identity, and I was able to reshape, regroup, and expand out in multiple directions at once.
And I think for people to realize who don't already kind of like operate with that mindset is like, if they're curious about it, just understand that like anything, it takes time to cultivate. And so like the more you can view the world in general, like with that kind of like positive mindset, that like there's the quote, in the middle of chaos lies opportunity. So if you can,
exactly right.
So like if that's, so over time, it will become second nature to be like, wow, this fucking sucks, but I know that something good is coming from this. Like, trust the process. That's my whole thing.
100%. And that something good really does take intentionality in your own application. Like something good's not going to just happen automatically. It takes that mindset intentional to apply it and shape things to your benefit. Like it just doesn't happen. Things don't just happen. Some things happen to you, but we have a choice on how we're going to decide to forcefully implement our will into it,
Yeah. Everything requires action.
Absolutely. 100%. Yeah. So you talk about the chaos thing. I have a chapter I think the chapter's titled Leverage Chaos as an Idea Engine. And it springs off a Jocko Willink quote, Sun Tzu. And when he talks about, the opportunity within chaos and that's what it's all about. Like seeing chaos, even though it can be a threat, if not handled properly, but it also can be, it's just an energy. Okay, how can I take this energy and shape it? Like it's kind of working with it, like dancing with the chaos, so that it doesn't bite you, but you actually use its power to your benefit. And
Yeah.
that takes a different kind of perspective.
Yeah. Like, I just believe that every problem, as it were, has a solution. Like, where there's a will, there's a way, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Like, if like I just have to keep thinking or pause thinking, go do something else and let it come to you, like,
Yes.
instead of
Yes.
fucking obsessing over it.
Yes. You need
Yeah.
that surplus of solitude to really kind of, step outside, be objective, and figure out how you can move with it. Yeah.
Yeah. So do you want to jump into the second rule of failure, which is nothing is safe?
Yeah. So that's failure rule number 2 is nothing is safe. And that's like the one thing that I learned through all the things I was trying, like, and all the things I've done in my life. And it's just like detaching myself from this idea of safety, because it doesn't benefit me. And non-attachment to the external world is really the best way to smoothly move through it while not ignoring the external world. I still love enjoying things. I love making money. I like driving a Cadillac. I like smoking cigars in my hot tub. I love that stuff. But if it all gets taken away, I'm okay because I'm not attached to it. I embrace it. I use it. I try to optimize it. And having lost everything, regained it. Lost everything, regained it again. I have that inside me. This just like, it's the Winston Churchill quote, success is going from one failure to another without loss of enthusiasm. That enthusiasm is it sustains me. It's like an endorphin through pain, keeps me going. Just find one little area of micro momentum to keep going. But nothing is safe. The concept honestly really came from Lemmy from Motorhead. He was doing an interview with Loudwire, and it was after the terrorist attacks in the UK at the Ariana Grande show. And Motorhead was scheduled to play thereafter, and it got canceled from the venues and everything else. And he's being interviewed, and they're asking him, well, if they would have let you play, would you have played? And he's like, fuck yeah. I mean, I'm paraphrasing, but fuck yeah, nothing is safe. Yeah, I would have played. Like, nothing is safe. We got to get away from this idea that everything is safe. And then he's talking about the terrorists, and he's like, they don't rock and roll, and I don't like them. Fuck those people, whatever. But like, it's that idea, like, let's sure try to be safe as much as is possible, but that should not always be the highest value in everything you do. Like, it needs to be weighed against competing values that might be higher than safety. And I really think that a lot of people that are clinging to safety helps, makes them live a small life, often muzzles their internal spirit voice, and I think really makes people sick. Physically, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, even
because they're not being their true self. They're not letting that be expressed.
And if everything on paper looks good, they might have a nice house, good job, good car, what appears to be a good marriage. But if they're playing everything so safe, it's like it's like the Henry David Thoreau quote, living a quiet life of just desperation, which has been popularized by Rogan. But like, I think that's really true for a lot of people. And then other people I see who apparently live in like from mess to mess to mess to mess, but somehow are happy in it and finding joy in it and still finding enough order to keep going. Sometimes I look at their lives, and that's probably more resembles my life, and there's just more life there, and there's more like, there's nothing being held in, there's nothing being held back. And to me, that's the idea of nothing is safe.
Yeah. And like, also just like a quick like riff on that too. I'm trying to remember where I saw this, but basically someone else said this, not me, but like, you got to ask yourself, as far as like making choices, big choices or whatever, like, is this nourishing me or is this depleting me?
Yes.
I feel like that kind of plays into that.
100%. And that doesn't always align with, the external benefits of a decision. It's the internal nourishment. Is it really making me come alive? Is it really helping me be everything that I ought to be in this world?
Yeah. Money is spiritual. Number 3.
Yeah. Failure rule number 3 is money is spiritual, which from a failure perspective is really the idea that if you stay away from the failure edge territories of envy and greed, which I view as malevolent twin siblings, they're basically mirrored spirits, just of different manifestations. If you can stay away from that and really view money as an agnostic tool, it's neither something to revile nor something to worship. It can be a multiplier of blessings. It's really a thank you note. Every time you place value on something, it's really just a measure of gratitude. Like one example I have from the book is, when I was younger, I worked at a car wash, white glove car wash. I dropped out of college, And, that was probably one of the best times of my life. I learned so many life lessons of hard work and working with people with addictions and family problems and empathy and all kinds of things I learned. I learned how to be a good salesman, all these things, right? So fast forward 25 years later, what have you, I got off work early one day. I got to take my car to the White Glove Car Wash because I love those guys. And this guy, his name was Prince, fondness for, the naming inspiration and Purple Rain aside, he did such a great job on my car, and he did it with such enthusiasm. Like the quitting bell came, it was like 5 o'clock, they were closing down. He kept going, every little detail, right? And I was like so inspired by that. I had this kind of spontaneous moment of gratitude. And I don't say this to manifest myself as some great giver, because I actually suck at giving. I'm really not good at it. But I was like, all right, let me go to the ATM. I'll get you your tip. And I came and gave him $100 tip for what was a $25 service, because it was like that money is spiritual thing. Like, this is how I show my gratitude. And I think when we think of money that way, it can be a tool to lift us up out of poverty, to go bless others. The money that you receive in any form, authentically transacted, really is a thank you note. And that's the idea. It's a good, kind of hedge against failure.
Yeah, because like there's so many, we know this, there's so many people that think that money, you can't be spiritual and, be wealthy, and that just in general, that being wealthy is, frowned upon, and you're gross and all this stuff. And I'm like, fuck all of you, who's like, I want to be so ridiculously wealthy, because I want to use my money for good. I want to buy like all the amazing food that supports all these amazing companies who are like doing things in the world and making change in their various ways. Like, money lets you make positive changes.
Exactly.
So like,
it's hard to be charitable when you're poor. It's hard to be a big tipper when you're poor. It's hard to start businesses when you're poor. It's hard to advance beliefs in the world when you don't have money to mobilize those beliefs. All those things are very difficult without money. Doesn't mean that money can't be, used as a negative tool. Like I said, it can. There's envy, there's greed. I think that those paths don't sustain, and they usually just make the person bitter anyway. But money viewed properly, I think, is 100% powerfully spiritual.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like you were saying, the whole gratitude thing, like, yeah, I'm into it. Like, I love it. And I also had to work on like my money mindset and that sort of stuff too. Like it's been an evolution, I guess. Yeah. And now I'm just so like, give it all to me, because I want to do so many good things. And like, the healthier I am, having money to acquire, hiking in the mountains, go on a trip to hike in the mountains, or like eat this awesome food that costs money, expensive for the quality of the ingredients and stuff, like, then I'm in a better place to keep doing these awesome podcasts and things. Exactly. So it's just like, it's all giving.
Yes. And the idea that all people who have money are greedy and are out to get you. I don't believe that. Some are, sure. I don't think they last. Those wealthy people that I know that have sustained their wealth are some of the most giving and generous people I know, while not perfect. And I don't think there's any inherent nobility in poverty, while at the same time, many people who are poor are so rich in spirit that their poverty does not, inhibit them from being generous. But I think there's also many poor people who are, because of their envy, are actually, that's a mere spirit to greed. And I think it really just depends on how you view money.
Yeah. There's a book, what is it called? How to Have a Millionaire Mindset, I think. I can't remember. It's all those kind of titles are so dopey to me. They're so stupid, but like the book was like awesome because it challenges your perspective and your relationship and how you were brought up.
Yes.
What society, has like brainwashed us into having this like negative belief, which just keeps us all down. So show them and like, yeah. 100%.
Here's an advert in less than 50 seconds. Are you sick and tired of feeling sick and tired? Do you want to feel better in your mind and body? Then check out the wellness coaching that I offer. It's kind of like therapy. You can share what's on your mind, and then it's all about taking action. You'll learn new tools to help you heal and grow through what's tripping you up. We can focus on anything from physical health to mental health. Schedule a free 15-minute consult over on the website to learn more. And check out our Healthy Touring course. This self-guided online video course is for any level of musician. Whether you tour all the time or only sometimes, you'll learn a ton if your goal is to play better, feel better, and be better. With special appearances by members of Descendants, Teenage Bottle Rocket, The Last Gang, the Lawrence Arms, and more. Head over to the website for all the details. Now, back to the interview.
So failure rule number 4. Build your thing 1 and thing 2 dependency.
That's right. Which sounds like, what does that even mean, right? Thing 1 and thing 2. It's not a Cat in the Hat reference. It has nothing to do with that. I more envision like a disheveled Tony Soprano waking up in his white bathrobe, lighting his first cigar of the day, and speaking in Italian American slang. And like, you got your thing 1 enabler pursuit over here, and your thing 2 North Star dream over here. They got to work together. It's more like that. So thing 1 is like your enabler pursuit, right? It might be a low meaning or potentially even no meaning, although I don't really believe that anything has no meaning if you treat it correctly. But it might be a low meaning job or pursuit, or a set of enabling kind of scaffolding that you have that allows you to more safely go after your thing star or your thing 2 North Star dream. Even though your dreams aren't safe and nothing is safe, you can, build things to help you more easily go after your dream and enable them. So
would it kind of be like, say, a day job and then, that thing you're pursuing like after work to get that going?
That's the most basic application. It's just day job, bang down a 9 to 5 and have a side hustle, right?
Yeah.
But then there's many more creative ways to do it. One example I give in the book that connects to the music industry is Chris Wren from Bridge 9 Records. I mean, you think of the creative way that he funded Bridge 9 Records. He didn't just work a day job to get money to fund Bridge 9 Records. Instead, he created another company that was more lucrative and more immediate, Yankee Sucks merchandise. He went out, created that, and took the profits from Yankee Suck to fund like the first 15, 16, 17 Bridge 9 releases and underwrite them, right? So it's still entrepreneurial, his thing 1 enabler, even though it wasn't his high passion. His passion was hardcore, Bridge 9. But he did this creative thing 1, thing 2 dependency kind of model. And so that's like one of those examples, right? I have some other kind of creative examples of the model in the book, but you're right. The most basic, simple one is bang down a 9 to 5, slowly side hustle your dream. But there's other ways to accelerate it. And that's one of the creative ways that he chose to do it.
That's cool. All right. Did people ever have resistance in that, like trouble, like digesting that or believing that rule?
Strangely, I thought that was the most less sexy rule in the whole book, but apparently everybody thinks that's the most applicable. More people are kind of really into that concept because I think it's more real. Like, oh yeah, I want to do this and I want to do that, but how the hell am I supposed to do it? I still have obligations, I still have responsibilities, I'm time poor. And to show these examples of people who might have had those same challenges and still found a way to go after the dream, I think gives people a better blueprint on how they can, practically go after it. And the thing is too, with that too, it's almost like, not only does it make it a little more safe, but I think it's more rich in terms of the look back narrative, because now all of a sudden I'm telling the story about Chris Wren, but it's not just about the cool records he put out. It's about the rich narrative on how he was able to find a way to do it. And that just gives even more meaning to the story. It gives more meaning to what he accomplished, as opposed to he just took out a bank loan, started a record label and it worked out. Like the creative way to go about it, like kind of finding that third door, makes it even more of a richer narrative for someone's life and someone's story. And so, I think it's really important.
That's also a cool way for people to zoom out and look at their lives. If they look at themselves as the main character in a story or a movie, like what is this person going to do next? What is that? Like you're writing your story. So like, I could do this or I could do that, like
having a cinematic mindset of your own life. And that's huge for me. I do that all the time. That's why I wrote my spy novel. Like in a time of failure, I had a financial planning practice that was affected by the 2008 financial crisis. It was going downhill. It was failing. And I escaped in this healthy escape of reading spy novels. And I started to identify with these protagonists and these main characters. And that led me to write my own spy novel. And it was just my mentality that even amidst failure and hardship, it was like, I just envisioned myself being in a movie, like, where am I going to find my creative loop into victory? And to me, that's always very helpful to kind of see yourself bigger than life, even artificially. Right. But it's, to me, it's a creative way of living.
Yeah. It's empowering.
Yeah.
Yeah. Number 5, you are not your failures.
Yeah, so I think this might be arguably the most powerful one. I think the bookend of Failure Purifies and You Are Not Your Failures, failure rule number 1 and failure rule number 5. I think they really like wrap up all of them all together really well. I mean, failure rule number 5, you are not your failures. I mean, in order to allow failure to purify you and to step out of being an emotional participant and be an objective observer, you have to decouple your identity from the failure event, even if you did something stupid that caused it, right? Like that's an action you did. It might have been stupid. You probably could have had better foresight, but it does not define you. And if you don't allow it to define you, you decouple your identity from it, and you realize you are not your failures, you can find your way back into that reinvention. So an example I use in the book, another somewhat music example, Elgin James, who was the founder of FSU, which was the violent straight edge street gang that, was on gangland and everything else. Well, he walked away from that violence, which was like an ethical failure. He still faced the consequences and the messiness of those actions kind of honorably. He went to prison for extortion. On the day of his sentencing, he's in court and he basically talks about how this was like, the crux of both his past that he had turned from and the future he was embracing. So he had reinvented himself. And on that day he was sentenced, it was the day that he got a deal with Universal Pictures for film. And I don't remember which one it was, but like Robert Redford became his mentor and wrote a letter to the judge. He went on to do the screenplay for Mayans MC, the spinoff to Sons of Anarchy on FX. And so like his whole transformation, side note, he happens to be the half brother of Jocko Willink, which I found interesting. But that whole like his whole story is like one example I talk about that connects to You and Not Your Failures. It's he didn't let like the negativity of his past life as a gang leader to define him. He was able to reinvent and do so with forgiving himself and then putting out good in the world in terms of his highest use of his skills of creativity in screenwriting.
Yeah. And it's also, I mean, that's like a really just good, can't think of what you'd call it, like a tool that you would learn in therapy too, where, like you might have made this mistake, but that mistake, you are not like, you did something bad, but you are not inherently bad,
That's
so
right.
it's that separation, like, which is so healthy to just view anything anyway.
Yeah, and of course, it's not an excuse for doing things bad, particularly if it's an ethical failure, right? But it's to say these happen. What can you do to separate your emotions from that, not repeat it, and then really, put good in the world to kind of move in a different direction and correct, right? While not beating yourself up forever for something in the past or, chaining yourself to that identity as if that's who you're always going to be. It's just in me, right? It's recognizing the power you have to enact change and transformation.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. I've asked some people this question. Sometimes it doesn't come across very clearly, but do you believe in regrets?
That's a very tricky one. I have a really hard time answering that. I was asked that on a podcast last week.
Oh, really?
And I only had like one regret that I could really define. So I certainly think they can exist, but even within the regrets, again, you can find a way to regret something and take that regretful event and still turn it into good. So I'm still always on the PMA side. I'm still always on the positive mental attitude side, even when it comes to regrets, because even the regrets I've had, I found ways to turn them into something good, right? So it's very tough for me to admit regrets. I might say that I would have done something differently, but having not done it differently, I still find a way to turn it into something positive and powerful.
Yeah, because I've had someone say, well, but whatever happened affected the other person, some other person. And I was like, yeah, but it's not up to you what their journey is in life, the lessons they need to learn, what shapes them. So like you could have actually created the most fundamental like spark in them, something that you're now regretting. Like, so I think regrets are for the fucking birds.
I'm with you. Like I think of like David Goggins, his story. I don't know if you're familiar with David Goggins.
Oh my God, I'm obsessed with him.
Yeah. So his first book was actually published by Lioncrest Publishing, who did Failure Rules. Right. Pretty cool. But you think of his life. I mean, you think of the abuse his father had on him. Now, if his father he passed away, if before he passed, his father actually had a redemptive moment and, a CTJ kind of come to Jesus kind of moment and wishes he hadn't done that and regretted it. Now that might've been proper, but at the same time, had he not done that, there never would have been this catastrophic existential pressure on Goggins to reverse the effect of that abuse and become the monumental human being he is today. If he had had an easy life, he would not be who he was today. It just would not have happened. He would not have had that grit and that grind to go after it. Now, he could have responded differently in his journey with his free will and just stayed overweight, stayed spraying cockroaches, and never became a Navy SEAL and all that. But it is that individual choice and free will to do with our life and trauma we experience what we can do. So you might regret something where you may have even caused trauma in somebody's life, and that's proper. But at the same time, it's theirs to respond to and see how they're going to rise above it, maybe even become stronger than they ever would have. And it's the idea in the Scene to Leave, the author of Scene to Leave and Anti-Fragile, talking about like being anti-fragile is not just being resilient and getting up when you fall down. It's actually gaining from harm, where you exponentially, like a hydra, become stronger because of the harm. Harm is actually good for you,
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I talk about in the book. And to me, that's real.
I love it. Like, this is like, I'm just like so into like, I don't know, mental toughness,
Yes.
just that sort of
Yeah.
thing. Like, I'm just really obsessed with it.
Well, me too. I mean, I've had to invoke it in my life, and so much so where, I was on this beach walk of end of 2013 and was convicted to write a book on the value of failure, right? So it took me 7 years to write it, another year and a half to edit it. Now I'm out talking about it. And,
Yeah.
that's what the book's all about, folks. Failure Rules, the 5 rules of failure for entrepreneurs, creators, and authentics. Go buy it anywhere books are sold online. Check out the website, Andrew Thorp King, no E at the end of Thorp. You can get a free Failure Rules mini course there. There's a Failure Rules soundtrack with all the bands I love on there that kind of inspired the book and connect to the values of the book. I mean, everything from Terror to Madball to H2O to Coughing Cats to Black Flag. All kinds of great stuff on there. It's on
So
Spotify.
cool.
Everything else. Yeah.
So cool. And obviously, like everyone, when you watch a fucking podcast, the links are going to be associated, so will all be clickable for everybody listening. Yeah. And just really quick, because you pretty much segued into the closing so perfectly.
You don't have to close. I just was throwing it out there. It just kind of came naturally. But.
Yeah. But I got to pick up on one thing that you said, how it took you, what do you say, 7 years to write it?
Oh, yeah. And amidst many changes, like, I mean,
yeah,
relationships, got remarried, job stuff. Like, I mean, I kept returning to it, kept returning to the well. The muse that
little nugget, I mean, which is not little, but like, for people who feel like, oh, this is taking so long, or what if it takes this long? Like, if something is in your blood, you can't deny it. You got to just do it, see it through,
Yep.
And the other thing too, is, had you given up or whatever, like for people who aren't passionately pursuing or even like just returning to whatever their calling is or passion project, is like, you're doing the world a disservice.
Absolutely.
By not putting out something that like you're really smart about or could inspire someone else. Like, you're fucking other people over.
That's right. Because you're not giving the world what it's supposed to give. That's the whole idea. I think like Stephen Pressfield talks about that. So if you're ignoring that call, you're going to be sick in some way, shape, or form. Like, it's going to internally like kind of fuck you up, and then trying to artificially peg yourself to timelines or outcome also isn't good either. It's like the Bhagavad Gita talks about, like, you have a right to the work, but not to the fruit of the work. Like, you can't control what's going to happen with it. You just know you got to do it. And you do it. You want good outcomes. You can plan. You can do all the smart business things, do that or whatever. And you should, but you can't even attach yourself to the outcomes, right? Like, this book, like, it, could sell 10,000 copies or 100,000 or 2,000 or whatever. I just know I'm supposed to do it.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm just doing it. Like,
and the other thing with,
I'm going to lose money on it for a long time. I don't care. Like, I plan for that. Like, I'm doing it because I have to do it.
Yeah. And the other thing with numbers, as I have a podcast and Instagram, like everybody's got that, you have to just ignore the fucking numbers and also know that even if it is a small number, those are people who, it's like going to a show and like it did not sell out. There might be like 20 people there, terrible turnout, but those 20 people are there and they care. And that's a fucking big deal.
It's a big deal. It's a big deal. Absolutely. I mean, if I get like, 1 or 2 people in a week tell me that a video really impacted them, and then they share a story of their life, or that the book impacted in some way, like, that's the spiritual kind of like proof of concept for me. Like, numbers can be important, sure. But look, I also built the thing 1 and thing 2 dependency. Like, I'm not depending on my thing 2. I got thing 1s to take care of this. The thing 2 I'm doing because I got to. I have to. It's in,
Yeah. I love it. So cool. Thank you for sharing everything.
Keep that PMA, keep buggering on. Don't over-identify with your pursuits or your failures, and just, make reinvention your utmost skill,
Yes.